The moment she stepped off the plane in Manila, she knew she was in for a culinary adventure unlike anything she had experienced in her native Ukraine. The heat, the chaos of traffic, and the symphony of honking jeepneys greeted her with a vibrancy that made her feel both exhilarated and slightly overwhelmed. She had traveled thousands of miles from the calm streets of Kyiv, from the cobblestone alleys where winter had left its frosty imprint, to dive headfirst into the world of the Philippines' most expensive restaurants. And she was determined to understand what made Filipino fine dining stand out, especially compared to the more modest luxury she was accustomed to back home. Her journey began at Gallery by Chele, a celebrated restaurant tucked in a modern, understated corner of Manila. The facade was elegant but restrained, giving nothing away about the bursts of creativity waiting inside. From the outside, it looked like any other high-end city eatery, but stepping through the door felt like entering a different universe. The air was a delicate balance of perfumed sophistication and warm, welcoming comfort. She marveled at the way the Filipino staff seamlessly blended professionalism with heartfelt hospitality. In Ukraine, upscale restaurants often leaned on formality. Here, politeness never sacrificed genuine warmth. Seated at a long wooden table adorned with minimalist decor, she studied the menu. Each dish sounded like poetry, a story folded into a plate. Filipino ingredients were presented in ways she had never imagined. Fresh local seafood paired with molecular gastronomy techniques, native spices balanced by subtle, intricate sauces. The tasting menu promised multiple courses, each one a revelation. She could feel her senses heightening with anticipation. In Kyiv, a tasting menu might be meticulously crafted, but there was a reserved, almost somber reverence in the way it was presented. Here, each course came with a flourish, a story, and a personal touch from the chef who occasionally appeared to explain his inspiration. It was not just dining, it was storytelling through food. Her first bite of a locally sourced fish, perfectly seared and paired with a delicate calamansi sauce, made her pause. The flavors danced in her mouth in a way she had never experienced. It was rich, complex, yet comforting, like the perfect memory of a home she had never known. The balance between luxury and accessibility was remarkable. Despite the high price point, the experience felt intimate rather than pretentious. She noted this as a stark contrast to what she had often found in Ukrainian fine dining. In Ukraine, expensive meals sometimes came with a sense of distance. The staff remained reserved, the ambiance strict, and conversation was subdued. In the Philippines, high-end dining did not mean detachment. It meant connection. After Gallery by Chele, she ventured to Yai Premium Omakase, a Japanese-inspired tasting experience in the heart of Manila. The restaurant's interior was understated, almost meditative, a sanctuary from the bustling city streets outside. She watched as sushi masters prepared each piece with meticulous precision. Unlike her previous experiences in Ukraine, where sushi was usually a straightforward affair with subtle elegance, here every movement was ritualistic, yet approachable. The chefs explained the origins of each ingredient, the history behind the preparation methods, and the cultural significance of each course. She felt an emotional intimacy with her meal, like she was part of a living tradition, even as a foreigner. The Philippines had managed to merge international influences with deeply local storytelling, creating a tapestry of taste and culture. One evening, she found herself at Smith & Wollensky, a luxury steakhouse that had earned a reputation for its unparalleled quality. The ambience was grand without being intimidating. Plush leather seats, soft lighting, and an open view into the kitchen where chefs worked with both confidence and humility made the experience feel regal yet approachable. Here, the beef itself was the star. Filipino Wagyu cuts melted effortlessly on the tongue, each bite a revelation of marbling care and dedication. What struck her most was not only the quality of the food but the Filipino approach to dining as a shared experience. Patrons conversed with warmth, laughter punctuating the clinking of glasses. It was a world away from the often rigid formality of upscale dining back home. Throughout her culinary exploration, she was struck by the uniquely Filipino approach to luxury. While the meals were expensive, the experience was never about exclusivity for its own sake. The focus was on creating joy, connection, and surprise. Servers anticipated needs before she even voiced them. Chefs occasionally emerged to explain dishes, not just as a show, but as a bridge between their culture and the diner. She realized that Filipino luxury was less about ostentation and more about heart, an attitude that made every peso feel meaningful. Contrasting these experiences with Ukraine, she thought of beef, meat, and wine in Kyiv, one of the few restaurants where steak lovers could indulge. It was elegant, modern, and meticulously curated, yet she remembered the quiet, almost solemn atmosphere that pervaded the dining room. She could feel the difference immediately. In Ukraine, fine dining was about skill and precision, but there was often a quiet barrier between the guest and the chef. In Manila, the barrier was gone. The chef was a storyteller, the waiter a companion, and she, a willing participant in a narrative that unfolded course by course. Her exploration continued at 11 Mirrors Rooftop Restaurant and Bar, a fine dining rooftop in the Ukrainian capital that offered panoramic views of the cityscape. The view was breathtaking, but she noted how luxury was expressed differently. The Ukrainian approach emphasized grandeur and refinement, which she admired, but the experience felt contained. In Manila, even high-end restaurants had a sense of playful warmth. Servers smiled genuinely, dishes were infused with storytelling, and flavors were bold yet comforting. She realized that while both countries valued quality, the Filipino approach combined sophistication with heart, humor, and warmth. On the streets of Makati, she observed how Filipino high-end dining was surrounded by community life. Luxury restaurants were not distant palaces. They were integrated into neighborhoods where jeepneys, street vendors, and pedestrians shared the space. She marveled at this coexistence. Luxury was elevated, but never divorced from everyday life. In Ukraine, upscale districts could feel almost insular, creating a separation between fine dining and daily existence. Manila, she thought, had found a way to blend the extraordinary with the ordinary seamlessly. Her journey took her to Toyo Eatery, a restaurant that celebrated Filipino ingredients with modern techniques. Each dish was a love letter to the country's diverse flavors, combining seafood, tropical fruits, and native herbs with contemporary culinary methods. The balance was extraordinary. As she tasted each bite, she was reminded of Ukrainian dishes that relied heavily on technique and tradition. Yet she noticed how Filipino cuisine conveyed warmth, surprise, and creativity in every mouthful. She realized that flavor could carry emotion, culture, and identity in a way that transcended the plate. Even in casual conversations with other diners, she noticed a recurring theme: pride in culture, tempered by humility. Patrons spoke excitedly about ingredients, chefs, and the history behind dishes, yet there was laughter, teasing, and shared delight. It was an environment that encouraged connection, not just with food, but with people, with culture, and with life. Ukrainian luxury dining, by contrast, often maintained a refined distance. Patrons respected the craft, but humor and spontaneous warmth were less central. Here, she understood that Filipino luxury was as much about heart as taste. As part one of her journey drew to a close, she reflected on the contrast between her experiences. The Philippines offered luxury without pretension, warmth without compromise, and a storytelling approach that made every meal feel meaningful. Ukraine offered refinement, technical excellence, and cultural pride, but it lacked the emotional immersion she now found so compelling. She realized that what she had discovered in Manila was not just about food. It was about how a culture could elevate everyday experiences into art, laughter, and shared memory. The morning sunlight spilled through the glass windows of her hotel room, catching the bustling streets of Manila below. She stretched, eager to resume her culinary adventure. Part one had been an awakening, an immersion into a world of fine dining that merged artistry with heart. But today, she wanted to explore beyond the tasting menus and omakase to see how Filipino hospitality and the love for food infiltrated the everyday luxury of life in the city. Her first stop was Toyo Eatery, a modern Filipino restaurant acclaimed for reimagining traditional dishes. The moment she stepped inside, she was greeted not just by polite staff, but by the faint aroma of roasted coconut, lemongrass, and smoked fish. The restaurant felt alive, each table a small story unfolding. She watched as couples whispered over delicate plates of kinilaw and lechon, their laughter blending with the soft jazz playing in the background. It was a scene of intimacy and celebration. She thought about Ukraine's upscale dining experiences, places like 11 Mirrors Rooftop Restaurant and Bar, where the view was breathtaking and every detail meticulously crafted, yet the atmosphere often felt reserved. Here, Manila's fine dining was grand without being distant. It was inclusive, human, playful. Patrons, staff, and chefs moved in harmony, yet each person brought their own personality to the table. The menu at Toyo Eatery was a revelation. She tried adobong pusit with a twist of local citrus, a dish that danced between tangy and savory. Each bite told a story of tradition, yet innovation. She marveled at how Filipino chefs could honor centuries of culinary history while introducing flavors that felt entirely new. She compared it to traditional Ukrainian borscht, where every ingredient had a role, but where the flavor palette was more restrained. In Manila, flavor was exuberant, bold, and unapologetic. After lunch, she decided to venture into Smith & Wollensky Manila once more, this time for a more leisurely exploration of its steak offerings. Watching the chefs carefully handle Wagyu beef, she noticed the care that went into every presentation, every cut, every grill mark. But what caught her attention most was the subtle humor and warmth that permeated the restaurant. Servers joked lightly with patrons, laughter mingling with the sizzling of meat. It was a culture of excellence without rigidity. In Ukraine, such warmth in fine dining was rare. Formality was the rule, smiles were measured, and humor was sparse. Here it felt natural, effortless. Her exploration then took her to Yai Premium Omakase, the Japanese-inspired experience she had visited earlier. Today, she was more confident, more observant. She noticed how Filipino diners engaged actively with the chefs, asking questions about the origin of each fish, the reason behind each cut, the subtlety of the sauces. It wasn't just about food, it was about curiosity, respect, and cultural exchange. In Ukraine, fine dining was about appreciation, but often silent reverence. Here, appreciation came with conversation, laughter, and an openness that encouraged learning. By mid-afternoon, she found herself walking through Makati's high-end streets, reflecting on the cultural contrasts she had observed. Manila's luxury dining was not isolated in gated complexes. It coexisted with vibrant street life. Jeepneys rattled past, street vendors sold local snacks, and office workers paused for coffee at boutique cafes. In Ukraine, upscale districts often felt self-contained, removed from everyday life. Here, high-end dining was woven seamlessly into the city's fabric, accessible in spirit if not in price. The Philippines had mastered a kind of democratized luxury, a luxury that invited participation, not observation. Her next culinary adventure was at Helm, known for its personal chef's table experience. She was seated at the center of the restaurant, where she could observe the chefs preparing each dish with precision and creativity. Each movement felt choreographed, yet natural. The Filipino chefs spoke among themselves with warmth and humor, teasing each other, laughing at small mistakes, celebrating small victories. She noted the contrast to Ukrainian kitchens, where high-end restaurants often operated with quiet intensity, communication minimal, and hierarchy strictly maintained. Here, joy was part of the craft, embedded into every dish. The tasting menu at Helm introduced her to native herbs she had never heard of, balanced perfectly with seafood, citrus, and tropical spices. She realized Filipino chefs were not just cooks, they were storytellers. Every flavor, every plate, every garnish conveyed history, culture, and emotion. She felt an intimate connection not only to the food but to the people who created it. In Ukraine, while meals were technically impressive, they rarely carried such expressive warmth. There was mastery, yes, but rarely the laughter and playfulness she now experienced. That evening, she visited Toyo Eatery's private dining room for a small gathering of local food enthusiasts. Here, the experience became deeply social. Conversations flowed easily about culinary techniques, family recipes, and cultural pride. She shared anecdotes about Ukrainian dining habits, comparing them to Filipino practices, drawing laughter from her new friends. She noticed how Filipinos treated sharing food as a form of generosity, a bond, a celebration of togetherness. Back home, she reflected, dining could be formal, reserved, and structured. Here, it was warmth in motion. Her journey took a more unexpected turn when she explored local Filipino street food vendors, a different kind of luxury she had not anticipated. She sampled balut, isaw, and kwek-kwek, experiencing flavors that were simultaneously shocking, bold, and comforting. She realized that in the Philippines, the concept of expensive was relative, not just monetary, but emotional. The joy and creativity infused into both street food and Michelin-style dining made each experience feel valuable. In Ukraine, the line between street food and fine dining was far starker, with each existing in separate realms. Manila blurred that line beautifully. One day, she attended a private tasting at Toyo Eatery, observing the meticulous preparation of lechon belly paired with native herbs. The chef explained how each ingredient was selected not only for taste, but for memory, nostalgia, and regional heritage. She noticed how Filipino diners actively participated, tasting, commenting, and engaging in the story. In Ukraine, diners at fine establishments tended to remain quiet observers. The interaction here created a shared narrative, a communal experience. Luxury, she realized, was not just what was served on the plate, but how it was experienced together. She reflected on her observations. Filipino luxury dining emphasized connection, warmth, humor, and storytelling, while Ukrainian fine dining emphasized precision, mastery, and refinement. Both had value, but the emotional component in the Philippines created an immersive experience that lingered long after the meal ended. She laughed quietly to herself, remembering moments when servers had playfully guided her through unfamiliar ingredients, correcting mispronunciations of local terms, or teasing her for choosing flavors that unexpectedly clashed, yet worked miraculously. As the day came to an end, she visited Celera, another Filipino fine dining spot that elevated local ingredients with a modern twist. The chef introduced innovative dishes combining tropical fruits, local seafood, and fermented flavors, each explained with passion and humor. She realized that in the Philippines, even the most expensive restaurants were an extension of the culture itself. Hospitality, laughter, family, storytelling, and creativity were as central as the food. By nightfall, she walked along Manila Bay, reflecting on the contrasts she had observed. In Ukraine, fine dining was a lesson in discipline, craftsmanship, and elegance. In the Philippines, it was a celebration of life, infused with humor, heart, and connection. Both were impressive in their own ways, but the Filipino approach had changed her perception of luxury, value, and what it meant to dine with intention and joy. Her final stop that day was a small local Filipino dessert cafe, tucked away from the main avenues. Here, she tried Halo Halo, a dessert layered with textures, colors, and flavors that told a story of summer, family, and festivity. Eating it, she realized that Filipino culinary artistry was not confined to five-star restaurants. It permeated every level of dining. Street vendors, dessert shops, and high-end establishments all carried the same philosophy. Food is joy, community, and culture all at once. The sun rose gently over Manila, casting golden light on the streets as the Ukrainian traveler prepared for the final chapter of her culinary exploration. Part 3 was not just about tasting food. It was about understanding the essence of Filipino dining culture, the heart behind every dish, and the laughter and warmth that infused every interaction. She was ready to fully immerse herself in the stories, the humor, and the humanity that had made her Manila experience so unforgettable. Her day began at Gallery by Chele once more, this time with a sense of familiarity and confidence. The staff greeted her like an old friend, remembering her previous visits and teasing her gently about the extra spoonful of calamansi she had taken last time. She laughed, realizing how quickly she had adapted to the Filipino way of enjoying meals, not just with manners, but with playfulness, curiosity, and joy. Every course told a story, from locally sourced seafood to desserts that combined tropical fruits with traditional Filipino ingredients in unexpected ways. She reflected on how, back in Ukraine, luxury was often about restraint. Here, it was about expression, bold flavors, bold emotions, and a sense of celebration that was impossible to ignore. After a morning of tasting and learning, she ventured into street food alleys with her new Filipino friends. This was where she had truly understood the Filipino love for food. She tried taho, a sweet silken tofu snack, marveling at its simplicity and comfort. Vendors called out greetings with warmth, joking with patrons, and inviting her to taste extras without hesitation. The scene reminded her that in the Philippines, connection was built into everyday life, into every shared bite, every smile, every small conversation. In Ukraine, she realized, even casual dining could feel distant, formal, or transactional. Manila taught her that food was a bridge between people, cultures, and hearts. Midday found her at Yai Premium Omakase once again, this time joining a group of local food enthusiasts who shared their favorite Filipino ingredients and techniques. The sushi masters explained the subtle differences in regional fish, the history of native condiments, and the philosophy behind each preparation. She listened, captivated, as Filipino diners asked questions with genuine curiosity and humor. There was laughter, banter, and shared amazement, moments that were as delicious as the food itself. She compared it silently to fine dining experiences in Kyiv, where decorum often overshadowed conversation. Here, every detail was an invitation to connect, to participate, to celebrate. Her exploration continued at Smith & Wollensky, where she was invited to witness the chef's special preparation for a private dinner. She observed the precision in slicing Wagyu beef, the care in balancing flavors, and the artistry in plating. Yet what stood out most was the Filipino touch. The chefs joked with each other, the staff shared stories of past diners, and laughter floated across the room like a seasoning enhancing every bite. She realized that Filipino luxury was not about perfection alone. It was about humanity, warmth, and joy. Even the most refined dishes were accompanied by smiles, banter, and connection. In Ukraine, she reflected, fine dining could sometimes feel like a performance. Here, it was a shared celebration. In the afternoon, she visited Toyo Eatery once more, attending a workshop where chefs demonstrated the delicate balance of traditional Filipino flavors with modern techniques. She watched, fascinated, as adobo was reinterpreted with molecular gastronomy, as native herbs were paired with seafood in ways she had never imagined. The chefs encouraged questions, jokes, and playful experimentation. She laughed at her own mistakes, spilling a bit of sauce, mispronouncing an ingredient, yet everyone around her treated it as part of the fun. It was a stark contrast to Ukraine, where a minor mistake in a high-end kitchen could be met with silence or quiet reprimand. Here, joy and learning walked hand in hand. Later, she took a quiet walk along Manila Bay, reflecting on her journey. She thought about the differences she had observed between Ukrainian and Filipino luxury dining: precision versus playfulness, restraint versus exuberance, formality versus heartfelt warmth. She realized that Filipino dining culture was a reflection of a broader societal philosophy, a philosophy that valued relationships, connection, humor, and generosity. Luxury was measured not just in cost or technique, but in the emotional resonance of the experience. Her evening led her to Helm, where she participated in a multi-course tasting that pushed her understanding of Filipino cuisine to its limits. Each dish was a story: roasted pork belly seasoned with native spices, fish prepared with innovative techniques, desserts that danced between sweet and tangy, traditional and modern. She marveled at how chefs infused each plate with history, emotion, and playful creativity. Patrons shared bites, laughed at unexpected flavors, and celebrated small moments of delight. She understood now that the heart of Filipino luxury was not isolation, but community. Throughout her Part 3 journey, she kept a journal filled with observations and reflections. She wrote about the humor that ran through Filipino dining, the way a server might tease her about trying too many sauces, or how diners laughed together over a shared dessert. She noted how Filipino values, pakikisama, hiya, utang na loob, were subtly expressed in every interaction, even in the context of luxury. These values created an emotional richness that elevated every meal beyond mere consumption. In Ukraine, she realized, fine dining emphasized technique, skill, and exclusivity. In Manila, it emphasized humanity. Her reflections took her back to a humble dessert stall selling Halo Halo, the colorful mix of shaved ice, sweet beans, fruits, and milk. She laughed as she attempted to pronounce every ingredient, spilling a bit of ice as the vendor teased her playfully. She realized that Filipino food culture was inclusive, engaging, and emotionally intelligent. It invited participation, curiosity, and connection. The simple act of enjoying dessert became a celebration of life, laughter, and community. The final night of her journey brought her to a small gathering hosted by local chefs and food enthusiasts. They shared stories of Filipino culinary traditions, regional ingredients, and personal memories tied to food. She contributed her own stories from Ukraine, creating laughter and fascination as cultural contrasts were explored. The room buzzed with warmth, humor, and mutual admiration. She understood fully now why luxury dining in Manila felt transformative. It was about inclusion, emotion, and shared humanity. As she packed her journal and prepared for her return flight to Ukraine, she reflected on her journey. The Philippines had changed her perception of luxury, dining, and connection. She realized that the value of a meal was not only in its ingredients, presentation, or cost, but in the laughter shared, the warmth extended, and the stories told. Manila had taught her that food could be a bridge to culture, community, and the human heart. Her final thought as she looked out over the Manila skyline was a simple one. Luxury was not just about perfection, it was about joy. It was about warmth, humor, and connection. And in that realization, she carried home not just memories of extraordinary meals, but a heart full of laughter, insight, and love for the people and culture that had welcomed her so completely.